France is a country where freedom of religion and freedom of thought are guaranteed by virtue of the 1789 Declaration of the Rights of Man of the Citizen. The Republic is based on the principle of laïcité enforced by the 1880s Jules Ferry laws and the 1905 French law on the separation of the churches and the state. Roman Catholicism, the religion of a majority of French people, is no longer the state religion that it was before the 1789 Revolution and throughout the various, non-republican regimes of the 19th century. Major religions practiced in France include Catholic Christianity, Islam, Judaism, various branches of Protestantism, Hinduism, Russian Orthodoxy, Armenian Christianity, and Sikhism amongst others, making it a multi-confessional country. While millions in France continue to attend religious services regularly, the overall level of observance is considerably lower than in the past. According to the Eurobarometer poll conducted in 2010, 27% of French citizens responded that they believe there is a God. 33% answered that they believe there is some sort of spirit or life force, and 40% answered that they do not believe there is any sort of spirit, God, or life force. This makes France one of the more secular countries in the world. Legal status and brief history. France guarantees freedom of religion as a constitutional right, and the government generally respects this right in practice. A long history of violent conflict between groups led the state to break its ties to the Catholic Church early in the 1800s and adopt a strong commitment to maintaining a totally secular public sector. Catholicism as a state religion. Catholicism is the primary religion in France. During the ancient regime, France had traditionally been considered the Church's eldest daughter, and the King of France always maintained close links to the Pope. This led to various conflicts, in particular during the Reformation between Catholics and Huguenots. French wars of religion. A strong Protestant population resided in France, and were persecuted by the state. These wars continued throughout the 16th century, with the 1572 St. Bartholomew's Day massacre as its apex, until the 1598 Edict of Nantes issued by Henri IV. For the first time, Huguenots were considered by the state as more than mere schismatics and heretics. The Edict of Nantes thus opened a path for secularism and tolerance. In offering general freedom of conscience to individuals, the edict offered many specific concessions to the Protestants: amnesty, the reinstatement of their civil rights, including the right to work in any field or for the state and to bring grievances directly to the king. Post-Edict of Nantes, the 1598 edict also granted the Protestants 50 places of safety, which were military strongholds such as La Rochelle, for which the king paid 180,000 écus a year, along with a further 150 emergency forts, to be maintained at the Huguenots' own expense. Such an innovative act of toleration stood virtually alone in a Europe where standard practice forced the subjects of a ruler to follow whatever religion that the ruler formally adopted. The application of the principle of cuius regis, eius religia. Religious conflicts resumed in the end of the 17th century, when Louis XIV, the Sun King, initiated the persecution of Huguenots by the Dragonnades, created in 1681, who intimidated the Protestants into converting to Catholicism. He made this policy official with the 1685 revocation of the Edict of Nantes. As a result, a large number of Protestants, estimates range from 200,000 to 500,000, left France during the following 2 decades, seeking asylum in England, the United Provinces, Denmark, in the Protestant states of the Holy Roman Empire, and European colonies in North America and South Africa. On 17 January 1686, Louis XIV himself claimed that out of a Huguenot population of 800,000 to 900,000, only 1,000 to 1,500 had remained in France. A Camisard Huguenot rebellion broke out in 1702 in the Cevennes Mountains. The 1685 revocation of the Edict of Nantes created a state of affairs in France similar to that of virtually every other European country of the period, where only the majority state religion was tolerated. The experiment of religious toleration in Europe was effectively ended for the time being. In practice, the revocation caused France to suffer a brain drain, as it lost a large number of skilled craftsmen, including key designers such as Daniel Marot. Upon leaving France, Huguenots took with them knowledge of important techniques in production, which had a significant effect on the quality of the silk plate glass, silversmithing for which the Huguenots were renowned, and cabinet-making industries of those regions to which they relocated. Some rulers, such as Frederick Wilhelm of Brandenburg, who issued the Edict of Potsdam, encouraged the Protestants to flee and settle in their countries. French Revolution. During the French Revolution, the Catholic Church was increasingly attacked. The civil constitution of the clergy, passed in 1790, put the Catholic Church under state control. The newly created Republican government would continue to persecute the Catholic Church for much of the early 1790s, establishing two new state religions to replace Catholicism. Following the Thermidorian reaction, the National Convention restored freedom of religion, but the schism between the French government and the Catholic Church wouldn't end until the Concordat of 1801 by Napoleon. Bourbon Restoration. After the Bourbon Restoration and the coming to power of the ultra-royalists in the Chamber introuvable, Roman Catholicism again became the state religion of France. Under Villèle's ultra-royalist government, the Chamber voted in the extreme 1830 Anti-Sacrilege Act. Third Republic. 1905 French law on the separation of the churches and the state. A 1905 law instituted the separation of church and state and prohibited the government from recognizing, salarying or subsidizing any religion. However, the Briand-Serrati Agreement subsequently restored for a while a formal role for the state in the appointment of Catholic bishops. In the preceding situation, established 1801 to 1808 by the Concordat, the state supported the Roman Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Calvinist Church and the Jewish religion, and provided for public religious educations in those established religions. For historical reasons, this situation is still current in Alsace-Moselle, which was a German region in 1905 and maintains a local law, known as the Concordat. The national government salaries clergy of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Metz and of Strasbourg, of the Lutheran Protestant Church of Augsburg, Confession of Alsace and Lorraine, of the Protestant Reformed Church of Alsace and Lorraine, and of the three regional Israelite consistories as state civil servants, and provides for non-compulsory religious education in those religions in public schools and universities. For similar historical reasons, Catholic priests in French Guiana are civil servants of the local government. Religious buildings built prior to 1905 at taxpayers' expense are retained by the local or national government, and may be used at no expense by religious organizations. As a consequence, most Catholic churches, Protestant temples, and Jewish synagogues are owned by the government. The government, since 1905, has been prohibited from funding any post-1905 religious edifice, and thus religions must build and support all newer religious buildings at their own expense. Some local governments de facto subsidize prayer rooms as part of greater cultural associations. An ongoing topic of controversy is whether the separation of church and state should be weakened so that the government should be able to subsidize Muslim prayer rooms and the formation of imams. Advocates of such measures, such as Nicolas Sarkozy at times, declare that they would encourage the Muslim population to better integrate into the fabric of French society. Opponents contend that the state should not fund religions. Furthermore, the state ban on wearing conspicuous religious symbols, such as the Islamic female headscarf, in public schools has alienated some French Muslims, provoked minor street protests and drawn some international criticism. Religious organizations are not required to register, but may if they wish to apply for tax-exempt status or to gain official recognition. The 1901 and 1905 laws define two categories under which religious groups may register: associations cultuelles and associations culturelles. Associations in these two categories are subject to certain management and financial disclosure requirements. An association of worship may organize only religious activities, loosely defined as liturgical services and practices, but no social or diaconal ones. A cultural association may engage in social as well as in profit-making activity. Although a cultural association is not exempt from taxes, it may receive government subsidies for its cultural and educational operations, such as schools. Religious groups normally register entities under both of these categories. Churches run strictly religious activities through associations of worship and operate schools and social activities under cultural associations. In accordance with the provisions of Title IV, Art. 19 of the law of 9 December 1905, these associations of worship must be exclusively for the purpose of religious ministries, i.e., the performance of religious ceremonies and services, the acquisition and maintenance of buildings of worship, the wages and the theological education of their ministers of religion. Under the 1905 statute, religious groups must apply with the local prefecture to be recognized as an association of worship and receive tax-exempt status. The prefecture reviews the submitted documentation regarding the association's purpose for existence. To qualify, the group's purpose must be solely the practice of some form of religious ministries. According to the Ministry of the Interior, 109 of 1,138 Protestant associations, 15 of 147 Jewish associations, and approximately 30 of 1,050 Muslim associations have tax-free status. Approximately 100 Catholic associations are tax-exempt. A representative of the Ministry of Interior reports that the number of non-tax-exempt Catholic associations is too numerous to estimate accurately. More than 50 associations of the Jehovah's Witnesses have tax-free status. According to the 1905 law, associations of worship are not taxed on the donations that they receive. However, the prefecture may decide to review a group's status if the association receives a large donation or legacy that comes to the attention of the tax authorities. If the prefecture determines that the association is not in fact in conformity with the 1905 law, its status may be changed, and it may be required to pay taxes at a rate of 70% on the present and past donations that fall within a legal category close to that of inheritance. Religion and society. French public policy. The French traditionally consider religion a private matter. Depending on the context, they may consider it inquisitive to enter religious discussions. Communautarisme, meaning the forming of ethnic or religious communities separate from mainstream life, occurs frequently but often meets with suspicion. The separation of religion from government power, legally referred to as laïcité, has held sway since the Jules Ferry laws passed at the end of the 19th century and since the 1905 French law on the separation of the churches and the state. Left-wing politicians generally do not discuss their religious beliefs, or lack thereof, and seldom use religious arguments in political debates, with the notable exception of Jacques Delors. Some centrist politicians such as François Bayrou or conservative politicians such as Union for a Popular Movement member Christine Boutin are much more vocal about their faith. Religious expressions and biblical references are coming back in public rhetoric, and during the 2007 presidential campaign, two of the candidates, Nicolas Sarkozy and Ségolène Royal, both raised as Roman Catholics, made a number of references to their faiths. For the first time ever, the French media asked all candidates to declare their religious affiliations. Out of 12 candidates, all but one chose to answer. One of the more significant signs of changes on the left, the anti-globalization activist José Bové feels close to Christianity. Marie-Georges Buffet, head of the fading French Communist Party, strongly opposed as any anti-religious interpretations of French secularism. However, both of them stop short of self-identifying as believers. Nicolas Sarkozy sees France's main religions as positive contributions to French society. He was elected on a platform proposing changes to the Republic's century-old principle of secularism. He visited the Pope in December 2007 and publicly acknowledged France's Christian roots, while highlighting the importance of freedom of thought, hinting that faith should come back into the public sphere. Islamic fundamentalism is considered by some to be a threat to the cohesion of the French society. Many, including the Canadian Cheney Acute, Liberation and other left-wing newspapers, claim that the Minister of Interior overplays the threat in order to justify certain policies. Reasons for tensions include the desire of a very few imams and other Muslims not to abide by French laws, regulations and customs, following conflicts about Muslim girls breaching school dress regulations or refusing to attend certain classes. The French government adopted in 2004 the then controversial French law on secularity and conspicuous religious symbols in schools. In 2003, as Interior Minister, Nicolas Sarkozy set up the French Council of the Muslim Faith, which secular-minded politicians have widely criticized as a sign of Sarkozy's alleged multiculturalism. These tensions echo earlier quarrels with respect to the influence of the Roman Catholic Church in French society and the influence of the Pope in French public affairs. The French public and government pay attention to certain minority religious groups, considered as cults. In 1995, the French National Assembly, the lower house of the Parliament of France, set up a parliamentary commission about cults in France, which issues a yearly report. Concerns mounted particularly following a much-publicized series of mass murders and suicides inside the Order of the Solar Temple in 1995. Public concerns include the well-being and education of children in cults that isolate themselves from the community, the advocacy of medical practices generally considered hazardous, the defrauding of members by greedy leaders and sexual abuse. Such concerns have resulted in the foundation of commissions charged with the monitoring of possibly dangerous cults as well as the enactment of legislation facilitating the prosecution of criminal organizations.